The Endorphin Speed line is arguably one of the most popular shoe lines in the world, but how did the Endorphin Speed 4 live up to the Endorphin Speed legacy? Today we're talking Saucony Endorphin Speed 4. What's up everyone? Welcome to Rad Dad Bod TV. I'm Eric McIntyre, aka Rad Dad Bod, and today we are talking about the Endorphin Speed 4. If this is your first time here and you're just looking for a couple of specifics about the shoe, feel free to jump around and you'll be able to see in the description below the different timestamps for the different aspects of the shoe and my breakdown. So feel free to jump around, but if you do, please take a minute and come back and watch the full video when you get a second, because I put a lot of time into these reviews and want to make them as good as possible for you. All right, before we get into the details of the shoe, let's talk about a few disclaimers and disclosures. I did get this shoe for free from a group associated with Saucony through my association with my local running store, Utah Run. I was given the shoe strictly for review and was not paid for my thoughts, and neither Utah Run nor the group that seeded me these shoes gets to watch this review beforehand. These thoughts are entirely my own. Now with that out of the way, let's talk about the intended use of the shoe by Saucony. Now Saucony technically defines this shoe as a lightweight daily trainer, which would put it in the same category as my last two reviews, which were the Hoka Mach 6 and the Rebel V4. However, the inclusion of a nylon plate in the shoe would normally put this in the super trainer category for most runners. Either way, the intended use is for a little bit of everything. So you can race in this shoe, you can do long runs in this shoe, easy runs in this shoe. It really is made to handle everything and handle it fairly well. From a pricing standpoint, this shoe comes in at $170, which I do feel like is high for that lightweight daily trainer category, which is another reason why I personally would put this in the super trainer category, where that would be priced appropriately. And it is priced similarly to other shoes in that category. Again, the super trainer and lightweight daily trainer category is just a little bit muddled, a little bit confusing. So for all intents and purposes today, we're calling this a super trainer. From a spec standpoint, this shoe comes in at 8.3 ounces in a men's size 9, which is a little bit lighter compared to most shoes in this category. Not quite as light as the traditional lightweight daily trainer, but just as light or in the same range as, again, those nylon plated super trainers. From a stack height standpoint, you have 38 millimeters in the heel and 30 millimeters in the forefoot for an 8 millimeter heel to toe drop, which is pretty much the standard for most Saucony models. An 8 millimeter drop is just on the edge of a medium heel to toe drop, so it's going to be pretty versatile for a wide range of runners. Now from a fit standpoint, this shoe fits true to size lengthwise. I don't find that it's a little bit long, a little bit short. I found that for my foot, it fits just about right, but it is a little bit narrow in the midfoot. And depending on who you talk to, they may say it's a lot a bit narrow in the midfoot. I didn't find that my toes were necessarily squished in the toe box. I'd say that the toe box is pretty standard fitting, but maybe a little bit on the narrower side. And the heel, same thing. It has good lockdown. It's a good fit. I would say it's a standard heel, but I definitely do think that this shoe fits a little bit narrower overall. Now, to give you an idea, I would not say this fits as narrow as the Hoka Mach 6, which is a shoe that many people are familiar with. So I wouldn't categorize it as a full-on narrow shoe, but again, narrower than a lot of its counterparts. I would say overall, again, it's in line with most Saucony shoes. Now, speaking of the upper, we have this zonal mesh throughout the entirety of the shoe with some plasticky, probably TPU overlays in terms of the logo here. I found this upper to be incredibly lightweight and incredibly breathable, and these extra eyelets here with the lacing really help you get some great lockdown in the midfoot, which probably contributes to that feeling of narrowness, but for me, I really like to have that nice lockdown so my foot doesn't slide around at all in the shoe. Another aspect that helps the lockdown of the shoe is it is a fully gusseted tongue, which is really, really nice because the tongue does stay put. I did find though up here in the forefoot that there was a little bit of tongue bunching, but because we have a fully mesh, kind of very breathable tongue, I didn't find that to cause any issues for me. In fact, I didn't even notice that it was happening until this last week when I looked down and saw my sock peeking through just a tiny bit. Now again, with that zonal mesh, the breathability is really, really nice, to the point where in the cold, you may get a little bit chilly because the air does flow pretty freely through the upper. And then from a heel lockdown standpoint, I feel like there's a decent heel cup. It is structured, but it's not incredibly hard, so it didn't cause any irritation, rubbing, and it kept my heel locked down in place without the need for the runner's knot or anything along those lines. The midsole is really where this shoe shines the most. The entire midsole is constructed with a Power Run PB, and there is a nylon plate that runs through the shoe, and it has these little wings on it as well, which give you some added stability. If you're not familiar with Power Run PB is Saucony's PIBA-based foam, and up until the development of Power Run HG in the Saucony Endorphin Elite and Pro 4, this was their best foam and one of the best foams on the market. This midsole typically comes, or this Power Run PB typically comes in this beaded kind of texture that you can see here. Again, that beaded texture has trickled down to other models in Power Run Plus, I believe. Even standard Power Run may have some of that in Saucony models, but overall, it's a very bouncy, very responsive foam. Now, in the past Saucony Endorphin models, I found them to be a little bit unstable. That Power Run PB, again, is very, very bouncy, but due to an increase in kind of the width of the shoe, at least of the midsole foam, as well as the wing nylon plate, I found this shoe to be fairly stable. Now, like most speed day or tempo day shoes, it's not a stability shoe and it doesn't pretend to be. So if you have stability issues, it's probably not the shoe for you. But as far as faster shoes on the market, it's one of the most stable ones of the year, in my opinion. The other thing that they do add into the shoe that's just kind of a nice touch is the sock liner inside the shoe is actually a supercritical foam as well. So you just get a little bit more of that like proprioceptive feedback or that bounce underfoot. Overall, the shoe feels very comfortable. From a sensation underfoot, again, I would say that it is smooth, it is responsive. I wouldn't categorize it as super bouncy in the sense that you're like popping off the ground so much as you are being propelled forward. This is a little bit of the difference, again, between maybe past Endorphin Speed models and this model in my mind, where in the past, the shoes were very, very bouncy, but that caused major instability, and that lack of, not speed, but the lack of bounce in particular is why I think this one does feel more stable. I think this shoe is best used more in that threshold tempo kind of zone, but I think you could definitely race half marathons, marathons in this shoe, and I did speed work, like shorter interval sessions in the shoe as well, and it felt very, very comfortable. The only situation that I wouldn't personally use this shoe in and feel comfortable in it is probably on easy runs, just because I don't like to run in any type of plated shoe on the daily. From an outsole perspective, you have this XT9000 rubber in a lattice pattern is how they describe it, and I would say that this traction is excellent. In order to shed some weight, obviously you can see that there isn't rubber across the entire outsole so much as you do have the exposed foam, but even 50-ish miles in with these shoes, I'm not really seeing any issues or wearing on the foam or uncovered areas. And on the traction itself, it looks to be holding up really, really well. I can maybe see some slight wear here on the lateral heel, but for the most part, the rubber is holding up very, very well. In my opinion, these shoes would do great in kind of any type of weather, whether it's kind of snowing, raining, just dry heat, whatever it may be. These are going to be really, really reliable underfoot, but as with most road shoes, I probably wouldn't take these on the trails necessarily unless they were dirt or bark chip. As far as who's this shoe for, frankly, I think this is the type of shoe that works for almost anyone, so long as you're not like a wide-footed runner. I think that this shoe shouldn't be the sole shoe that you own because, again, personally, I'm against using any type of plate as a daily use shoe, but I think this shoe could do really well even in a 2-shoe rotation where maybe you have more of your daily workhorse that's kind of for your easy runs, your recovery runs, and then this fills in the gaps pretty much everywhere else where you're maybe using it on your speed workouts as well as your long runs. I think people who are looking for something that is fairly stable and that is fast, that they can race in, but they're not quite ready or are a little bit worried about using a full-blown carbon-plated shoe because of the aggressiveness of those shoes, then this would be a really awesome kind of introduction to the concept of a plated shoe. I also think this shoe works for a lot of people because that 8mm heel-to-toe drop is in that mid-drop section. So people who are maybe used to a higher drop can come down without it being such a stark difference. And people who are used to maybe like a mid, like 5 or 6mm drop can go up and not feel like they're really, really straining their feet or lower limbs. Personally, I'm more of a 5 to 6mm guy myself, but I didn't have any issues in the Endorphin Speed 4. So again, just to summarize, people who I think are really going to love the shoe are people who need a shoe that can go fast, that can go long, that is going to do a little bit of everything, and they're adding kind of this as a second shoe to their rotation, not necessarily the first shoe I would use, or people who are running in a lot of shoes and want something less aggressive for race day, this is a definite race day option for the large majority of people. I would even consider racing in this for like a 5K, honestly, if I wanted something just really reliable on foot. All right, now let's break down some comparisons. First one we have to make is obviously to the Saucony Endorphin Pro 4, which is the super shoe counterpart in 2024 to the Speed 4. The Speed 4 is supposed to be the racing companion or training companion to this shoe, and so basically everything about this shoe gets slightly leveled up in the Pro 4. I do find that the Pro 4 fits a little bit wider, but is still kind of your classic Saucony fit, and personally, I kind of like the upper of the Speed 4 over the Pro 4 just in terms of breathability, but I think that the Pro 4 is maybe a little bit lighter weight. It's a little bit more of a sock-like fit. Foam-wise underfoot, the Endorphin Pro 4 has Power Run PB on the bottom and Power Run HG on the top. So it's going to be more responsive. It's going to be faster, but the sensation as far as how the shoe kind of rolls through underfoot, very similar for obvious reasons. They're made to be that way. As you can see though, the shoes are almost identical, and if you didn't know what you were looking at, you may think these were the same shoe. When compared to the Hoka Mach X, this was Hoka's super trainer from last year in this kind of lightweight daily category where this shoe was supposed to be able to do a lot of things and was kind of the marathon training companion to the Rocket X2. Setup is fairly similar, so you have a PIBA top layer, a supercritical EVA bottom layer, versus you have PIBA all throughout on the Endorphin Speed 4. But you do have a nylon plate over here and a P-Bax plate over here, basically different variations of plastic for the most part. I find that the Endorphin Speed 4 is a lot smoother and a lot faster than the Mach X. The Mach X felt slappy to me, and something about the foam and midsole setup just didn't quite work. So if you're looking for something a little bit smoother, the Endorphin Speed 4 is going to kind of be your move. Now, the Mach X does fit a little bit wider though, so if you're looking for a more accommodating fit, this may be your choice. I talked about this in the Hoka Mach 6 video, but kind of a dark horse comparison for the super trainer category. The Tier Valkyrie Speedworks is another super trainer that has an almost identical setup to the Saucony Endorphin Speed 4. You have the PIBA midsole with a nylon plate in the middle, but the difference between these shoes is really interesting. So based on midsole geometry, the Speed 4 is very smooth, a lot more stable, versus the Speedworks is very bouncy and a little bit unstable. In fact, the second I put this shoe on my foot, it reminded me of the Endorphin Speed 2. So if you're someone who loved the Endorphin Speed 2 and hasn't loved some of the updates to the new Speed line, then this may be your choice underfoot. The Tier Valkyrie Speedworks is the closest thing to a super shoe feel underfoot while still being a super trainer. So something to think about if you're not feeling the bounce here. Speedworks may be where to go. Last comparison I'll make, the Hoka Mach 6 and the Endorphin Speed 4. The fit is fairly similar. You do have a lower heel to toe drop in the Mach 6 than you do in the Speed 4, but these two shoes feel very similar in terms of overall fit. This fits narrow, this tends to fit narrow, but not quite as narrow as the 6. And the midsole geometry is pretty similar just in the curvature underfoot. And so the sensation of that heel to toe propulsion, kind of that speed roll technology from the Endorphin Speed 4, feels similar to the Mach 6. So if you're using this on the daily, this could be your speed day or even your race day option. What's interesting is both of these shoes are in my top 3 shoes of the year as well. So something to kind of consider when choosing a shoe here in 2024. All right, so there you go. That's the Saucony Endorphin Speed 4. Just kind of final thoughts. Overall, I really, really love this shoe. If I could only have probably 2 to 3 shoes, then I would include this one in my rotation every single time. I found it to be a great upgrade in terms of stability while not really sacrificing that forward propulsion. You can take this on long runs, you can take this on speed workouts, right? Interval track sessions. This shoe can do a little bit of everything. The only thing that I don't personally like to do in it is do daily easy runs, just because, again, of my bias towards plated shoes. But all in all, I think anyone who buys this shoe is going to be very satisfied, with the exception of maybe my wide-footed runners. But great great job by Saucony on this shoe. I think that they definitely threw out a winner for 2024. All right, if you stayed this far, I sure appreciate you. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and leave a comment letting me know if there's any additional details that I kind of left out that you're curious about with the Endorphin Speed 4. And finally, I'll leave you guys with the question: if you were an Endorphin fan pre-Speed 4, where do you feel that this ranks among the Endorphin Speed line? We'll see you later.